which was a need. Defenseman that plays on the power play, which is a real need. Right shot centerman. Feel Daniel Sprong addresses some another right winger, scored a right shot winger that scored some goals. Christian Fischer, a good solid checker, penalty killer, another right winger, natural right shot. So a lot of the moves. JT Compher can play any of the 3 forward positions, very versatile for us. So overall, we say target specific needs, and we're able to address those, and on each player very comfortable with the term of all the contracts that we did.
What need do you still want to address? You said
sleep would be one. Our needs probably, we'd like to score more. How we do that, I think that's the general consensus says, hey, the Red Wings need to score more. We need to keep the puck out of our net. We need to be better defensively, or we like our special teams to be better. I'm counting on collectively the entire group, the roster that we have now, to everybody chip in a little bit on the offense, which will help us score more. Getting Robbie Fabry back healthy, Lucas Raymond a year older. JT Compher coming into the mix, chipping in some goals. So collectively, I expect us to improve a little bit. It's probably still not where we'd all like it to be. So we'll continue in the off season here to see what, if anything, whether it be through some more free agents that are still out there, or even look at potential trades. Generally, after July 1 and 2, things start to settle down and teams reevaluate where they are and what they need to do, and for various reasons might have to make a move. And we've all kind of settled in after July 1 and 2, kind of knowing now where we go from here, and we'll explore some other opportunities potentially.
Steve, were you surprised by the lack of trade activity around the draft, and did you have a lot of conversations? Did you at any time feel that you were close to a deal?
No. At the draft specifically, there was a lot of discussions on picks moving back and forth in the first round and in the second and third. I think we make one move that we moved back and picked up we went from pick 43, I think, to 47 and picked up a fifth. There was a lot of that type of discussion. Kicked some tires a little bit, phone calls. Mostly at the draft, you're really focused on the draft, and any potential trades they're on your mind. You might have some discussion, but nothing really close. And we talk amongst each other throughout the course of the last, once team seasons end, all the way through now, and we'll continue that with all the teams around the league who, we kind of circle back and, after free agency, how you doing? What are you looking for? Some teams need this, some teams need that, and you see if you can come up with an idea. But I guess I wasn't really that surprised that there weren't a lot of moves made. You kind of have an idea as you're talking amongst each other, that you have an idea of what teams are trying to do. So it was relatively quiet.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So many short-term deals too in free agency. Did you kind of see that happening because of the salary cap?
I guess I'm not really surprised, and from a team's perspective, a lot of teams are squeezed a little bit. Not every team, but a lot of teams are squeezed. So trying to get guys on shorter-term deals, and for a lot of the players, they're looking at this potentially what happens to the cap a year from now, and if they couldn't get a deal that they liked or a one with term that was a good fit, that hey, kind of we'll do a 1-year deal, a shorter term deal, 1, 2, even 3 years, and the cap's going to go up. I'm going to go back at it. So I think there was motivation from the club side as well as the player side on doing some more shorter term deals.
Steve, you mentioned you were comfortable with the terms that you gave in JT Compher, the longest at 5 years. What about JT made you comfortable giving him a 5-year deal?
Well, I think he's a very good athlete. First of all, he's 28 years old, has remained relatively healthy. He's been in the league a long time, or 6 years now or so. After 5 or 6 years in the league, nobody's perfectly healthy. That's the reality. You get bumps and bruises along the way, but at 5-year term, I'm comfortable with that. One, he's a good skater. He's remained relatively healthy. Like we try to do as much background work as we can on players. You know, unfortunately, JT has some friends within our organization. You know, do they take care of themselves? Do they train? What kind of lifestyle are they living? You know, so we feel comfortable that, you know, and anything can happen injury-wise, but at this stage, a 5-year term is reasonable. And what I do like is his versatility as a hockey player. He can play all. He's a natural centerman. He's a right shot centerman, which we don't have at this time. We just drafted one in Nate, but we'll give him time to develop into an NHLer. But we've got a right shot centerman who has played all 3 forward positions, who has played on the power play, does kill penalties. So I think he's a very versatile player for us. And again, that ability to move around to me makes him very valuable.
He spoke to us about his experience with Colorado in the sense that when he got there, they were a rebuilding team, and then obviously they went all the way to a cup-winning team. Does that experience mean much to you?
Well, I think all the experience that he and I talked about that as well. And as I mentioned, playing all 3 forward positions is excellent as well. But he's been through a lot. He's a professional. He's, you know, it's difficult to play on a losing team. You know, I've had that experience in myself as a player, and we all want to play on good teams, and all the experience you benefit from it, and he will be able to help our players. I think he'll be a real help for Dylan. You know, he's lived through some challenging years here, and he's been patient, and he wants to win. And I think a guy like JT's experience can help Dylan get through this and persevere through it, and which I have no doubt he will. But yeah, I think he's very valuable, and having been on a Stanley Cup team, on a tremendous team with really good players, a well-coached team, also is a real benefit.
He had a big jump in his scoring last season, JT did. Did you see anything in his game that you felt like he took a step in a certain area that led to that? Or?
No, not really. You know, again, I've watched him going back to prior to him being drafted. You know, I remember he was drafted. I think we were picked the next pick actually when I was with Tampa. He got picked by the Avs. We might have been 2 picks later, but I think we drafted Adam Ernie at that same time. I'm very familiar with his career. I've watched him all along, and as we move through the last couple of years, in particular last year where he's in free agency and you're watching Colorado, knowing their cap situation, it's a guy that might get to free agency, so we kept a close eye on him. And if anything, he played a bigger role there this year. Unfortunately, the Avs had a lot of injuries, and he was able to be given play a bigger role, and we get to see some of his versatility, and he thrived in that role.
With Justin Hall
cap earlier, like, how did the anticipation for the cap to potentially go up over the next couple of years, how did that kind of inform what you were willing to do, what you weren't willing to do?
Well, you know, we look at we have estimations on what the cap's going to do, at least for the next 2 years. After that, I'm not really sure. We look at our own contracts, what we have committed, what we have expiring, kind of try to do some estimates. A lot like what we do next July 1, I have no idea. You know, so but we sit here and plan. We look at our younger players, their contracts, where they are, what we think their next one's going to look like, and you kind of slot it in there and how much money we have to spend. And the reality is we don't have very many commitments beyond maybe 3 commitments beyond next year. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but so we got a lot of flexibility to do anything, and that can change dramatically. So you want to be careful on locking yourself into term, locking yourself into no movement clauses, things like that don't give you any flexibility. So we're trying to do some planning for the future. Having said that, the plan changes dramatically from year to year because we don't know where we'll be drafting next year. We don't know which free agents will be out there. Some of our players, we have hope that they're going to take steps. Some will, some won't, and we kind of adjust. So have this plan for the next few years that changes every year.
Do all the defensemen you signed reflect a little bit that you may think Simon Edvinsson needs a little more seasoning in GR, or?
Here's what I'd say. Like, we have high hopes for Simon, and I'm not prepared to put him on the team in a top 6 role. Certainly, I don't think it's beyond a possibility that Simon comes in and has an outstanding training camp, an outstanding preseason, simply forces his way into the lineup. That's what I think every one of us, our fans, our organization, you all would love to see. And if that happens, that's great, and we'll figure it out. But at this stage, to say, hey, we're gonna put him right in the top 6. I'm not prepared to say that, and I don't want to do that. It's unfair to him, and it's not the right thing for any of our young players or the team in itself. So, one, we needed to get a right shot defenseman. That was important, and we can talk about Justin Hall shortly, but it was important to get a right shot defender. We needed that. We need 2 right shots. Ultimately, we signed Gustav Lidstrom was 1, Justin is 2. We looked at some right shot D. It was a priority. We'd all agree we'd like to get a defenseman that can play on the power play. Shane certainly fills that role. He's a left shot, but half of his usage and 5-on-5 was on the right side this year as well. So he's comfortable in that role. And going back to Simon, I think he's an excellent young prospect. We saw a lot of good things in the 9 games he played at the end of the season, and if he's ready to play and he earns a spot on the team, we'll figure it out.
Is that where you think Shane can maybe offset some of the offense you lost with Ronick?
Correct. Yeah, I think just on our power play, Moritz has played a lot on the power play. He continues to evolve. He's got he was good in year 1. He's gotten even better in year 2. We expect him to continue to evolve offensively. This whole game's getting better. Filip Zadina played on the power play. As you know, he was traded. Jake got a little bit of time in the PP. Ben a little bit of time. Ollie. But I think it's fair to say that Shane is he's been that played on the power play, played at the top, scores power play goals. His shot is really a threat from the point. So he specifically helps our power play, and expect him to play on it. And it just gives us more depth. If you have injuries or whatnot, having Mo, Shane, and Jake, Ollie, even Ben potentially to go there is important.
There's a lot of talk.
Sorry, just on that. And Simon, again, we think he's an excellent young prospect, and we're not just gonna. I don't think the right approach is to just throw him out there. Let's let him earn that spot, and God forbid we have too many good defensemen and we got to figure out a problem. Wouldn't that be a great situation?
Is that your same philosophy of talking about Simon, even though I'm now switching up to the forward core? Is that your same approach with Marco too?
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell any of these kids, hey, you're not on the team next year. You go out and play well and perform. 2 years ago, we were sure, our plan was Lucas. He's gonna need a year in the American League. Why do we say that? We're watching him in Sweden, and we don't really know. It's not and then he came over and he performed really well, and we kept saying, you know what, he looks good in the rookie tournament. He looks good in the preseason. Well, we'll start him off in the NHL. Hopefully he doesn't go backwards, and he had a good year. He never made it, so he wasn't handed that spot because our plan was to keep him in the American League for a year. So with all these guys, we'll let their play determine where they go, but we're not gonna, we don't want to put ourselves in a position that is we're hoping they make it, because if they don't, then what do? You got to address these needs really in the off season, obviously, but July, the 1st of July is when you need to do it if you can.
I'm looking addressing the scoring need, and based on what the Red Wings roster looks like, and then the additions that you made, I'm kind of that concept of scoring by committee. But I'm looking at the Vegas Knights stats here. The Golden Knights, after 80 games, they had 13 guys that had at least 11 goals, only 3 20-goal scorers. Is that, in finding a consistent goal scorer, like a 40-goal scorer, they're worth their weight in gold. So I don't know how many of those guys even exist anymore. I guess, is your philosophy now, and I'm using the Stanley Cup champs here as my basis for this question, but do you see scoring by committee is what the Red Wings are going to have to do? And it looks like, I'm not saying you switched your philosophy, but is that even a concept that's real? I mean, that, if, in order for the Red Wings to get more offense, everybody's got to up their goal total at least by 4 or 5. You need, you may never get a 40-goal scorer, but you can get 3 20-goal scorers, maybe a couple 30, and a bunch of guys in the high teens. I know that's a long question.
I think you answered your question, actually. Next question.
I thought this stuff way too much, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, what Vegas has proven.
Yeah. I would throw Yzerman, Seattle into the mix there with, man, what a tremendous season they had. we played that team, and I'm watching them, and they had a bunch of 20-goal scorers, guys that broke out, looked really good. And so the plan isn't necessarily, hey, we're going to score by committee. Like we need more goals. I think we can count. My expectation is we'll get a couple more out of all these guys. That'll increase our scoring. I think we're going to be a better defensive team collectively. That will help us as well. So, Vegas won because they had great contributions up and down their lineup. They got important goals from a lot of different people. That's ultimately how you win. If you rely on just too few guys, injury, cold spells, whatever. Generally, the teams that are winning in the NHL going a long way, they have depth, and that's even as good as Julian's Tampa teams were, Coop's Tampa teams with those high-end guys. They got great contributions in their 2 Stanley Cups up and down the lineup, going all the way back to our teams back in the day when there was no salary cap. You had Drape scoring big goals in the playoffs, Doug Brown scoring goals. We had depth, and good teams have depth. And
you added to that depth with...
I think we have some depth. We would all love, hey, a couple of big-time scorers. Hopefully we'll get that. And again, we'll continue to work at that. And how we go about it is a bit of a challenge.
You mentioned Seattle and just with Sprong. What kind of stood out to you about him and for the fit for you guys?
Well, 2 years ago we played in Washington, and Daniel's been around, been in a few organizations, always been a talented player. I took notice of him 2 years ago in Washington that he looked like he was becoming like an NHL player, or NHL regular. And then in Seattle this year, we played them twice. We went out to Seattle there in February, and I watched their team, and I was very impressed with the speed that they played with, the depth that they had in their team, and Daniel in particular, it looked again like he'd taken another step. And he wasn't qualified by them, and we took a look at first, took notice of that guy that might be a fit for us, and we got into on the first into free agency, started to work on some things and looking at a bunch of different things, and then we kind of came to the conclusion, look, I don't think he's going to be around long. If he's only looking for a 1-year deal, and it's not an unrealistic number, we could use another right shot forward. We can certainly need some goals, so we thought it was a good value signing. But he looks like his game has evolved to the extent we have time to look into their background, their character, and that we tried to do that with our staff were all there on July 1, and you get to calling around to your colleagues around the league to get some background, and it was very positive. But at the end of the day, on a 1-year deal at $2 million, we think he can contribute goal scoring and potentially at a good age that he can continue to grow. So I like his scoring ability, I like his size, and offensive ability. It fits a real need for us.
And on that front, with the kind of the free agency market changed a little bit, or at least on a public level, of when all the qualifying offers came out, he was someone who was going to be an RFA, became a UFA. How did that kind of change the market, just kind of that additional flood of names that came in and things like that this year?
Seems to be a little bit of a trend each year. There's more and more players not being qualified, not because teams don't like them or don't want, whether they have cap issues, the arbitration numbers coming in, scare them a little bit, make them nervous. Teams are you're starting to see some younger guys become UFAs. Puts more players into the market. How has it changed? I guess the only thing I kind of repeating myself, but you're starting to see it more common now, and better players are not being qualified, and some you're going, geez, I didn't see that coming, but we understand the reasons why teams do it. Just see some more movement. A lot of teams are prioritizing, signing your top guys and signing their star players, and it's becoming, if the cap starts to go up again, may change, but you're starting to see what the situation in the league in the last 3 years where the cap hasn't grown dramatically. teams are locking down their superstars, understandably, and that forces you to save on the other end. And some of those younger guys that in their second and third or third and maybe even fourth contracts with our Brights simply can't afford to fit those guys in. And if they're good teams, they're trying to win. They don't move those guys at the deadline, and they use them for the playoff run, and then they move on and try to replace them with cheaper guys on a one-year deal. So it's great in the sense that you got younger guys going to free agency, and then ultimately it's helping some of the veterans, maybe not necessarily on July 1, but after that. These teams need good players. You look at some guys signing pretty good veteran players signing cheap deals on really good teams because they want an opportunity to win. Those teams can't afford maybe the term in that of kind of the high-priced hot free agents. So it's kind of an interesting change in where the league is today.
Did that for you guys kind of had that situation with both Lindstrom and Kostin. Now Kostin was traded for. Was that kind of one of those where there was some risk you might have lost Clem if he had made it even further? Just kind of can take us through the thinking of that and just kind of the mechanisms there.
Well, obviously we got till 5 o'clock on the 30th to decide if we're Q on them. We look at what we think their arbitration case could be, and ultimately we went to both players. We acquired Clem prior to the 30th. In making the trade, talking with Kenny about it, what do we think it's going to cost to get him done. They couldn't afford, they were concerned they couldn't afford to pay him what he was willing to do. So we were able to get a contract done without having to go to arbitration. And the same with Gus Lidstrom. It's, one, we wanted to make sure in Gus's situation, he didn't play, he wasn't a regular in the lineup. He's going to be in a similar situation this year. We knew what his ARB case was, and I think it was a very good trade-off for both parties. That he got a number. If he wasn't qualified, not sure what he'd get in the open market. We kind of had an idea on where he would be in free agency. So we get a player that we like. We really like the person. He knows the organization, understands the role he's in, and the challenges he faces to get a spot in the lineup. So, I guess to answer your question specifically, we were able to reach an agreement prior to 5 p.m. And had we not, we might have had to make other decisions or gone in a different direction.
With Fisher and Kostin, do you feel you've addressed the need that there was a lot of talk after the season from you and Derek about wanting more pushback, being heavier and harder to play against?
Yeah, I think so. I like them. They're the young guys. I think theoretically still have upside. I think they can still grow. Christian, specifically, his role as a right winger, which was something of need, a little bit bigger guy. He's a good penalty killer. He sees an opportunity on our right side, and most coaches, but Derek in particular, I won't speak for him, but he likes and watch how he used his players this year. At times, he'd like to have a big matchup line, a defensive line to go against whoever it may be on another team, and Christian helps that on the right side. Clem is an evolving player, a highly touted junior player, offensive guy. He's evolving into a big. He was always big and strong, but a big, strong. He can shoot the puck in the net. He's playing hard. I think his role is growing. So yeah, one, they make us a bigger team. Clem adds a little bit of a dimension of not only shooting the puck in the net, hardness. Christian, a real good checker, straight up and down right winger, will kill penalties, can check in. I think each player has a little bit of, has more room to grow as hockey players, but they make us a little bit bigger for sure.
Steve, we've talked a lot about additions, but what are you thinking on Filip Zadina? Can you?
Well, I'll elaborate a little bit on it. Unfortunately, Filip last year he missed a lot of time due to injury. I thought in the 30-ish games that he played, I've seen growth in his game. Prior to the draft, a couple weeks prior to the draft, through his agent, he had asked, if he could potentially go somewhere else, looking for a more opportunity, a fresh start. So I've tried to do that. I've tried to find a place for him to play. Somebody who's interested in Filip would maybe give him that opportunity. I haven't been able to do that. So in making this, put him on waivers today, I'm trying to give him an opportunity to go somewhere to an organization if he wants to play more. We'll see if that happens.
Can you just, in the abstract, I mean, this is, Svechnikov at 15, Cholowski at 16, now Zadina, 3 first-round picks. How much harder it is to rebuild when, we all are geniuses drafting in hindsight, but just how it makes it more challenging when these first-round picks don't develop.
Theoretically, or statistically, the higher players are picked, the more likelihood you're going to get an impact player. There's no guarantees. The first pick overall, usually you're getting a pretty good player. Sometimes you're getting a superstar. With each pick, the numbers decrease a little bit. When you get into the late first round, the reality is, and if you all go back and look at the drafts, there's not a lot of certainty to it. So I'm not completely shocked, because it didn't just happen to some of the names you mentioned. It happens all around the league, and that's just the reality of having the draft probably at such an early age. Filip has picked at 6. I don't write his career off by any means. I think, again, I thought he made significant steps. It's been a challenge for him. He's had some injuries, playing in Detroit. I think he's got upside. I think he still can become a valuable player in the NHL. Last year was really cut short or held back. It was due to injury. There's nothing he or I or anybody can do about it. It happens. So, generally guys persevere. I look at Eli Tolvanen last year. We've mentioned Seattle. Was having a tough time in Nashville for whatever reason, and gets claimed by Seattle and really took off. Does that happen for Filip if he goes somewhere? Maybe. It could happen here. I would like it to happen here. I still think there's something there as a player. So we'll see where it goes. But, answering your specific question, but it's when you have high picks, boy, you miss on them. It can hurt, but it happens a lot more than you'd really think it. Again, when you go back and look at the drafts, you'd be surprised. You look 5, 6, 7 years later, it's like, boy, whatever happened to that guy? Just there's a lot of reasons. There's no guarantees to it.
Do you see then, should he clear waivers, he's still part of your future?
Yeah. He's got a contract for 2 more years. Like I say, I personally like Filip. I think there's something there as a hockey player. So if he clears, he's going to come to training camp. He's got to earn a spot on the team, and I think then there's not much more I can do at this stage to help him. He's got to go out and
But you understand why maybe he would like a change of scenery. I mean, there's no animosity between you or him. I mean, you did give him a 3-year deal, so.
Yep. No, animosities, no. I don't have animosity. Am I thrilled? No, I'm not. Am I happy to put him on waivers? No. I signed him to a 3-year contract a year ago because I believed he was going to grow. And he signed that contract, and my expectation is that he wanted to grow with us, and the reality now is, you wanted that contract. That contract may prevent you from getting that opportunity you're looking for in another organization. That's the reality for him. So the best case scenario, and it's not out of the realm of possibility, is he clears waivers, he comes to training camp, he plays well, he works his way up into the lineup and goes. But no, it's not. Filip Zadina is a good young man. He's a nice young man. He's a high pick, and with high picks there comes expectation from the outside, but from within. He's picked 6 overall. He's told by the Red Wings and by the league he's a very good prospect. Not everybody matures or evolves at the same stage. He's got to stick with it, and unfortunately now the situation is, if he doesn't get claimed that he's with our organization, there's not much we can do other than both work hard and see if he can become a player.
When you look at the other forwards, young forwards on this team, and I know you're not like sending messages and all that, they're pros, they know what their expectation level is, but how imperative is it for Lucas and Bergeron and Michael and Valeno to really take that next step? I mean, Michael's kind of done it already, but to elevate their game, I mean, there's, considering if you want to score by committee, that's your committee there. I mean, these guys have to, for lack of a better term, get better.
Yeah, you mentioned Michael Rasmussen. I think he really did take a step last year, you know, in his overall game. He's been around the organization 5 or 6 years now. I think we all see him maturing as a hockey player, maturing as a young man, and physically maturing. You see it on the ice in his skating. Michael's worked really hard. Like, he's gone home in the summers. He's stayed in Detroit in the off seasons. Really worked at it. His skating has really improved. He's a very dedicated athlete, and his confidence on and off the ice has really grown. I'm really happy for him because he's put a lot of work in, and he really cares. And you know, again, I came here 4 years ago, and you know, he was in the NHL. He started in the American Hockey League, and he's battled his way through. He's worked hard to get to where he is, and he's becoming a very good player. And very unfortunate that he suffers an injury last year because he was continuing to go this way, but he's got a good work ethic and he's got good drive, so I expect him to continue. And I think his offensive numbers, I can't tell you it's going to grow exponentially, but I think they're going to continue to grow, and he'll chip in. I'm hopeful, and I'm expecting, and I'm counting on Joe Valeno to take another step. Again, another good young man who's really driven and wants to do well, and he'll get more opportunity. I don't know that he was a healthy scratch at all last year, where in previous years he was in the minors, played regular. He's evolving as a player. We need hit. You know, Joe's got to fit. Much like Michael has adapted. I think he was considered a junior, a power play net front guy. He's learning how to check. He's learning how to win face-offs. He's killing penalties. That is earning him ice time, and the offensive part is growing. And I see Joe Valeno evolving in the same manner.
We have time for one more, Sean. Steve, just to clarify, if he does clear, does that change his status at all going to camp, or would he have to use waivers again? Just to clarify the process for how training camp.
Generally, I haven't done this a lot in the off season, but during the season, you put a player on waivers, and he clears. In order for 10 games or 28 days later, they would be required to go on or 30 days it might be, on waivers again. I would assume that, obviously we're not going to play any games, so I had assumed the day count will expire too, so come training camp, potentially to go to the minors, if that were the case, at some point he's going to need waivers again. Yeah, they expire off-season wise. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever done this other than in terms of using it for a buyout for unconditional waivers. I haven't put a player on waivers at this time.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Enjoy the summer.
Levy was another one. Levy, remember him? He was 5th overall by
Right.
Vancouver.
Right, yeah,
For
oh,
guys
yeah.
who didn't, yeah.
Yeah.
The league is full of them, but,
Yeah.
yeah, five games.
Pardon me?
Yeah, he played
He was
5
a
games
Red Wing
here.
for a few months.
Yeah, nice, very nice guy.
Yeah.